Gel-10 Burn Makeup with Stuart Bray. This is part 3 of our series on doing a realistic burn makeup with plat-gel Gel-10 using a flat mold process. Now the final effect that you see here, we will finally cover the application process in our part 4 of this video series. If you want to learn more about this process and similar prosthetic processes, go to Stuart's website, which is learnprostheticmakeup.com. He's got a lot of good tutorials there on a lot of advanced silicone and latex techniques. Now back to our process. Our part 3, we're going to show how to mold the appliance that we sculpted on a flat surface. Now this is some clean clay here, and Stuart's cutting this into strips to make a block mold over our prosthetic. Now the first thing we want to do is define that edge by going just outside the perimeter of our appliance, and we want to be careful to make sure that we maintain that thin edge of the appliance that was sculpted in the previous video. So to do that, we want to make sure we cut a good margin of about an inch or 3/4 of an inch to an inch around our prosthetic so we don't interfere with that thin edge. We'll be encapsulating this layer later with cap plastic, so we want to have a good edge to work with. Now once we've secured our clay wall and sealed up any gaps in that clay wall, we'll be ready to release the pattern and pour a 7315 rubber mold over the top. Now 7315 is also a platinum silicone. So since we're pouring a platinum silicone against a platinum silicone, we'll need to spray a layer of Poly's 2500 mold release on our pattern so we don't have adhesion occur between silicone and silicone. Now anytime you're molding a platinum piece or you're going to be casting a platinum piece, you want to make sure you're using a silicone that's compatible, and 7315 is a platinum silicone, so we don't have to worry about that interfering with our cure process of our Gel-10 later on in the mold process. Now we're weighing out equal parts of A and B. 7315 is a very simple to use silicone. It's a very low viscosity silicone, so we can mix it 1-to-1 by weight or volume, and it pours almost like water, so it's very easy to get a nice bubble-free mold without vacuum degassing. Now once we've properly mixed our A and B of our plat-gel 7315, ready to pour it over our pattern. Now notice Stuart is pouring that in a thin stream that helps stretch out and break up any remaining air bubbles from the mixing process. And you want to pour that in a slow, deliberate stream so that you force any air away from the silicone and out to the sides of the mold we're making. Now once our silicone is poured, it's a good idea to spray a light spray of 2500 over the top, and that lowers the surface tension so that any air bubbles rising to the surface will automatically pop and break. Now 7315 has about a 15-minute pour time and a 4-hour demold. So in about 4 hours at room temperature, about 75 degrees, you'll be ready to demold your finished block mold. Now we're ready to release the mold and cast our prosthetic. You want to make sure you spray release on this mold from several angles since it has a lot of fine detail. We want to make sure it's properly released so that our silicone will peel out of the finished mold here. Now after our release has dried, we're ready to apply a layer of cap plastic. We're using Super Baldies here to layer this, to laminate the surface of this mold, and we're going to apply 2 layers. And to make sure we get a good thin layer, we're going to dilute the Super Baldies with a little bit of Skin Illustrator Activator, which is basically 99% alcohol. Now it's important that you use 99% alcohol and not regular rubbing alcohol. 99% is the only thing that will dilute this properly. Now once it's been diluted, we want to take a disposable brush and pull out any of the extra hairs, any of the bristles that might fall out, and very carefully brush some of the Super Baldies across the surface of the mold. Now you'll notice Stuart is brushing from 2 different directions. We're going to start in one direction, south to north, and then we're going to go from east to west, or west to east in a minute. And the reason you want to do these cross-hatching in 2 layers once the first layer has dried is to ensure you get total coverage across the surface of your prosthetic. The other important detail here is to make sure that you carry that cap plastic all the way out to the edge. It's important that we have a good edge to work with because we're going to seal a layer of deadened Gel-10 between layers of cap plastic. Now here you can see Stuart's peeling up a little bit of that cap plastic, and that's the thin membrane we have to work with. Now once we've got that thin membrane established, we're ready to fill the mold with plat-gel Gel-10 deadened about 180%. For this particular project, we're going to deaden it between 150 and 180%. And keep in mind, Gel-10 can be deadened up to 250%, which for this particular piece would be a little more pliable than we need it to be. But at 150% deadener, we have a nice pliable piece that will easily conform to James's jaw. Now once we've measured out our parts A and B, we measure out our deadener. And in this case it's going to be 18 grams of deadener that we're measuring out. And it's always a good idea when you're working with these small amounts of plat-gel Gel-10 and deadener that you use a gram scale so that you get very accurate mixing and you don't have any cure issues later on. Now here Stuart is mixing in some of our silicone flesh color. And it just takes a little dab to get our intrinsic coloring of our silicone appliance. Now once that's mixed in, he'll also add some flocking, and here we're going to add just a pinch of some of the capillary colored flocking, or some of the red flocking. And you'll notice that breaks up the color a little bit and just adds a little more realism to our mix of silicone and deadener. Now keep in mind that with Gel-10, even when we add the deadener, we still only have a working time of 5 to 6 minutes at room temperature. So it's important that as soon as we get that adequately mixed, that we spread that out across our mold. Now once we've poured that into the surface of the mold, we want to very carefully spread that out and feather it to the edge of the appliance. In order to do that, we're going to use a clean popsicle stick and just carefully draw that out to the edge. And again, we don't want to go too far out to the edge because we want enough of that cap plastic exposed so when we brush in our final layer of cap plastic, we actually bond the front layer of cap plastic to the backing of cap plastic. And what this does is gives us a meltable edge in the finished prosthetic that can be blended seamlessly into James's jaw. We can also come back in with a Q-tip and feather that out further just to make absolute sure we have a thin feathered edge on our appliance. And again, this is critical here since we're going to sandwich that Gel-10 between layers of cap plastic. Now once our Gel-10 and deadener has cured, and that'll take about 30 minutes, we're ready to apply a final layer of cap plastic over the top to seal in our deadened Gel-10. Now our cap plastic is an air drying material, so as soon as it is dry to the touch, we can carefully powder our piece and carefully demold our piece. Now once we've powdered the back, we're ready to peel it carefully out of the 7315 mold. But it's also important that you work baby powder underneath your appliance and spread that as you peel the appliance up so you don't have any sticking on the surface as you demold that piece. So take your time and carefully demold that appliance so that you don't have any sticking on that surface layer. And once we've worked that off, we have our finished appliance with very thin edges ready for application. And because we've used plat-gel Gel-10 with deadener, it's pliable enough to conform to James's jaw. So now stick around for part 4 and we'll show the application process. But now we have an appliance ready to go, made from a flat mold of 7315.